In this next series of videos, we're going to talk about mobile SEO ranking factors. In this first one, we're going to talk about content. But before, I want to give a little bit of a preface to why mobile SEO factors as opposed to normal ranking factors. So we've been talking in our previous course about all the ranking factors that cause a website to rank at the top of Google or any other search engine. However, in around April, end of April 2015, Google decided to create a new crawler, and it started splitting its two crawlers, one for desktop and one for mobile. This new mobile crawler looks at websites completely different, and as you go through these videos, you're going to understand that a little bit better. But this new crawler tries to look at websites the way a user would look at it on a mobile device. So in this video, we're going to look at content prioritization, we're going to talk about user experience, and we're going to talk about engagement. And these are all really important foundational principles for mobile SEO. If you think about it, when the search engines have to decide how are we going to rank a mobile version of a site, the view space has now become much smaller, and now you've got a whole different experience than you would on a large desktop screen. And so they've changed up what the priorities are. And so we're going to talk about these foundational principles that everything else will kind of rest on. And so let's get into this. Prioritization is about putting the right content in the right place. And so with a mobile device, you have a very small view space. You need to make sure that when your page first loads, that you have the most important content at the top of the page. Now, this hasn't always been the case. With desktop, sometimes we put an animation or some kind of a giant image, like a hero image, or some kind of a rotator. But with mobile specifically, we need to have the words, the content up higher that we care about. We talk about how prioritization is very important because we want to communicate to the user before they ever have to scroll their device. And so we talk about this term above the fold. Above the fold refers to an old newspaper term. So it used to be that when you had the big newspaper pages, you couldn't sit down at a table and read the whole newspaper, and so they would fold it in half and read just the top of it. And so everything that is above the fold, the center fold of the newspaper, typically gets read more often. It's more important content. And so with websites and desktop, mobile devices, and tablets, we still use this above the fold, below the fold terminology. Above the fold would be everything that we see before we start scrolling on a website. So here's two examples of mobile devices with mobile websites on them for two just small local businesses. One of them is a Brazilian food restaurant called Tushar, and the other one is a Irish bar called Piper Down Pub. So if you look at both of these, this is the opening screen that you would see as you first load before you scroll the device. Well, from Google's perspective, what can be read? What is important? What are we stating here? Well, if you look at the Brazilian restaurant, Tushar, it says order online, it's all about good food. What it doesn't say is it doesn't say Brazilian food. It doesn't say what's actually in the picture, which is some skewers of beef and chicken and some vegetables on the side there. It doesn't say that they're open. It doesn't say where they're located. And so while the images are okay, it might not be the best user experience. On the other one, Piper Down, again, still a lot of negative space, a lot of imagery here, but you notice there's a phone number with an 801 area code which lets you know that this is located in Utah. There's an email address, it's got the Piper Down logo, and then it says a true old world pub experience. Well, just off of that statement, it gives you an idea that it's some kind of a European bar, old world pub. It gives you a little bit of a sentiment of what this is about. Now, if you were Google and you were looking at the first one, you don't know if that's a bar or a restaurant or a grocery store because it doesn't really state what it is, where just the subtle difference of having a statement of what this bar is and what it's about is enough for Google to understand how to rank that. And so even though both of these, I chose these specifically because they have a lot of imagery and a lot of negative space, but these subtle differences make the Piper Down Pub website a little bit better for mobile. So when we talk about user experience, traditionally, we're talking about functionality. When we talk about planning a website and how a user is going to navigate and travel through the website to the places we want them to go, this is user experience. And a lot of times functionality is about calls to action. It's about maybe something that transacts, but it's a lot about planning this process and then that process and then the next process. But on a mobile device, we really focus more on content because our functionality and our bandwidth is limited on a mobile device. And so we want to think about what content we're putting where, how strong our calls to action are, and how well it's readable and how well we lead them into the next area. And so user experience is really about, is the content usable and is it useful? So usable content can properly be consumed. It means it's big enough we can read it, it's clear enough, the images fit on the page correctly, and then useful is really a gauge of how well people like it and if they're willing to share it with other people. And so when we find things that are useful, whether they're funny or informative or exciting, we tend to tell other people about it. We text them a link, we share it on social media, we repost it somewhere else. And so usable and useful are two really important criteria for user experience. Now, most of the ranking factors on mobile are going to relate back to a user's engagement with that content. Did they read it? Did they keep going? And did they share it with the next person? So page speed is a huge factor because when pages load slowly on a mobile device, people don't tend to engage. They don't tend to go any further. They don't want to invest the time. Now, the problem is mobile devices have a limited bandwidth, and so they're only working at maybe 10 to 12% speed that of what you get in an office or at home. And so with that limited bandwidth, the faster websites are going to be more popular. Users are going to engage more with those websites. In the next video, we're going to talk about some tools, including one that assesses page speed, and tools are very important in mobile SEO. So I'll see you in the next video.